let's talk about it. We want to talk about a little Shohei Ohtani. He's in the news for good and, nothing that he did bad reasons. But we're going to start with him. Other night, hits his 40th home run and also throws 8 innings, deep into the 8th inning. You know, we talked about it with Mitch the last time Mitch Bernstein was on. And, we asked him if he's the MVP, and he says, well, I don't like my MVP to, not be in the playoffs. It's really hard to take this away from him. I mean, how do you not, if you define the true definition of most valuable player, Mike, this guy hits and pitches well.
I just had a slight change of heart because I was remembering what Mitch said, and I realized how much baseball is reliant on other things. Like wide receivers in the NFL are reliant on their quarterback sometimes to put up better stats. And for baseball players, they can hit home runs, they can do all these kind of things, but they have to rely on 8 other dudes. 8 other dudes that have the same opportunity they do. Although Shohei can pitch, obviously, but you can't just, I don't know, it's this fine line to walk up with the whole winning thing.
Okay, I'm a little confused by what you're saying. I mean, when you're at the plate, you can single-handedly control a game. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but the 2013 World Series, I think David Ortiz hit like 700, and the rest of the team hit like a combined like 213. He carried that team. So like a baseball player, I think especially a baseball player who can bat and pitch, has a much better impact on the game than a wide receiver who has an average quarterback and a terrible offensive line. That's why you don't see wide receivers win MVP.
Well, besides the 40 home runs, he's also gotten on base. And what if the guys just haven't batted him in? Is that his fault necessarily? We're going to knock him for not making the playoffs when guys won't bat him in to score more runs? Well, he can control the game pitching, but sometimes he's not hitting home runs.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it over a 162-game season, if you hit 40 home runs, I mean, your impact in the broad spectrum is not great. But I mean, his stats are there.
Right.
The pitching stats actually aren't as good as like a Cy Young candidate would be.
Right.
But he still has a winning record. And it just seems like the Angels are snake bitten. They really try. They really try hard to compete. They're just snake bitten in terms of like, they just bring in the wrong guys. They bring in names for sure, but they just don't bring in the right names that mesh well. And we talked about Shohei leaving. I don't know if he will, but this is just, it's tough. It's tough to leave him out of the conversation just because the team doesn't make the playoffs and isn't going to more than likely make the playoffs.
I agree. It's very tough. Would you give him the MVP personally? Like, what is your take on that?
My take on who
would
the
you
MVP
vote
is?
him for MVP? Yeah. I mean, it's hard to take it away from Shohei. You're right.
I wouldn't take it in the American League. I mean, like Mitch talked about, Vladimir Guerrero's having a great year. Carlos Correa's having a great year. George, I mean, a lot of those guys in Toronto are having a great year. It's been incredible watching what the Yankees have done after the trade deadline. There's not a clear-cut guy this year. So to say that, Shohei's out specifically, and this is not a knock on Mitch, but to say he's out specifically, especially what he's done with Mike Trout not being in the lineup for most of the year, and to be where they are, it's hard to really say. I mean, in the AL Central, you don't really have you have the White Sox, but other than you don't really have a great standout player on the White Sox, in my opinion, in terms of they're a great team. He could get a vote. If they don't just really tank down the stretch, he could get my vote. It's tough. There's no clear-cut winner, but to exclude him right now just because they won't make the playoffs is not something I'm interested in doing.
If they're in the hunt, I'll give it to them. But if they're out of the hunt, I can see Mitch's point. But if they're competitive and they're right there, I could see him winning it.
It's fair. It's totally fair. Even if they don't make it, if they're there come September and they're in a competitive spot, he's got to get it. Fair.